how has quarantine treated you during this time?
Well, I could speak to it kind of from two different lenses. Like one being a business owner and owning a gym, and my joke kind of the first few weeks was just really not a good time to be a gym owner
Hmm.
during quarantine. So that was a bit tricky in terms of transitioning our business and trying to figure out how to make a living and not knowing how long this was going to last. So scary. And then on the individual side, a little bit of the opposite, right? Almost kind of a 180 where you get some time back. We just got the puppy, and so we had time to kind of take care of the puppy and do some projects around the house and let some of the creative, juices flowing. So I feel like it was a real opposite balance. On one hand, like you appreciate this extra time that you've never been given for in life. Like, wow, what can I do with it? And then the other hand of it, as a business owner, you're like, oh my gosh, how am I ever gonna, get our gym back open? Are we gonna lose our clients and kind of all of that? So for I think the first 3 weeks, it was really challenging for me to kind of balance those two worlds. But we were able to switch our training to online. So we filmed, got out the camera and did some editing and filmed about 500 exercise videos.
There you go.
Actually, so our kids have all been training at home, doing some body weight stuff. So like out of restrictions comes creativity, right? How can you get the most out of this? I should say constraints. Like constraints are sometimes the best ways for us to have innovation. And so we switched, 3/4 of our clients onto online training. And so our business has been able to kind of float itself until we're back open. So that once that got settled out, then I was able to like really dive into some things and have some fun Zoom calls with different colleges about training. And the really cool thing from a professional standpoint is a lot of college coaches, and in my world, college pitching coaches, are taking this extra time to be like, what don't I know? And what have I always wanted to learn that I've never had time to learn? And they're getting their staffs together. And I've been on calls with coaches and strength coach and ATCs, like everybody in an environment on a team. And for the first time, like them all a second to sit, breathe, take in information, and collectively have a conversation without, okay, 5 minutes later, I got to leave because I got to go to this next meeting. And then I have kids coming in, and then we have practice starting. And so that was kind of fun, is being an instigator of thought and change a little bit. And these programs have a chance to kind of implement that change because they get this springtime and this summertime to figure out where are we going to implement some of those strategies. So that was pretty fun, getting on some phone calls with a few coaches in their programs.
Mm-hmm.
And
I have one question about that. Was there a common question or misconception during any of those Zoom calls with
the
coaches about?
yeah, the
Mhm,
question was, what do I do with my pitchers right? And that's where it started. Like, what do I do
mhm,
with my pitchers right now? Like, I don't know if they're throwing, and so we talked through scenarios, and looking at the calendar. And then the second most common one was like, how can I get myself and my strength coach and my athletic trainer on the same page? And not that, it wasn't in a negative way. It was just, we're not speaking the same language.
right.
And I'd like to get on the same page and see how I can better utilize them. So like the question was, can you help me that professional working relationship a little bit better so that I can get more use out of it? And honestly, like the skill coaches, the pitching coaches I spoke to were the first ones to put their hands up and say, like, I don't know what I'm doing with training or exercises or movement. Like, I don't get it. Can you help me? And that helped, I think, the strength coaches be like, oh, okay, like this is where we're working at. And you and I both know when you go into a college environment, it's a hustle, hustle, hustle.
Yeah.
There isn't to sit down and like get into these stuff. So yeah, it was like hey, I don't know what I'm doing right now.
Hmm.
Suggestions, and then, hey, what do you have going forward in the fall? What should we be looking at in terms of assessments and movements, and how should I be speaking to my strength coaches, and what should I be looking for from them to give me, and that kind of stuff.
What was your answer?
It depends. That's our favorite answer, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, for on the pitching side, I gave them like two options with your pitchers right now. I'm like, they either shut down and then they ramp it back up, in July and August, or you keep them going and you try to keep them on. I mean, ideally, I would go with this scenario. You keep them on the same schedule they would be throwing right now if they were playing.
Yeah.
So how many innings, how many days a week does that look like? How many pitches, if they had access to somebody be able to catch them? Because for an athlete to keep that routine, right? So they pitch all the way through this week, because this would be World Series week, right? And then the shutdown, let them shut down for 6 weeks or so, and then ramp it back up. So that way the athlete stays on that nice calendar, that routine, and that comfort. But if you couldn't have access to throwing, then you would need to shut them down on March 17th or whenever that was when California shut down. Then, give them 6 weeks and start it up from there. But I think mentally for an athlete, that's tough to just go from competing at like the top of your game, and now I'm just done, and there was no resolve.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really dependent upon what their pitchers had access to. I spoke with Lonnie Alameda at Florida State, and she had a really great idea. Is having her kids replay games on their like iPads. So a game they'd already pitched, put it up in their bullpen, play the game, and every time they threw a pitch in the game, they throw a pitch in the bullpen. And so they recreate that game, like pace that game, intensity as best they can. Like they're living through the video feed of that game and rethinking each pitch, which I thought was like a really awesome idea.
Mm-hmm.
Keep them
Not only that, I watched an old game and just going through some at bats. It's like weird how that you have a physiological reaction to a video of yourself because you like for a moment in time, part of you gets transported to that place you were at. And I imagine that happens with those pitchers who are watching their game video.
Yeah, certainly right. This one and these videos are really fresh. So within maybe a month or two or within a year, like you and I can watch a game and still have those emotional connections and those memories. I mean, you can watch an at bat and be like, oh, I know what I was thinking on that pitch from her in this now. Like they probably really remember that because that just happened. And so I think it was a really unique way to use what we have in 2020, which is technology, and the ability to easily send a game footage to a kid and have them play. We couldn't do that 20 years. But use the technology today to put them in that mindset that I'm playing a game. All those emotions. I'm not just throwing a bullpen. Because my fear when I was talking to coaches, like you don't want kids going out and athletes going out and just throwing for the sake of throwing. Like, we're just like empty reps in the bullpen. Yeah, I threw 100 pitches, but there was no purpose, intention.
Yeah.
April, May, this is when all the emotion starts to build and all the pressure starts to build. And that is as much of what they're learning how to handle and go through as it is about like what mechanics they're using or this specific, angle of release or whatever. It's like, hey, when the pressure's on or when you want it really bad, can we handle that? So putting them back in that environment and trying to like recreate it to some level, I think is really powerful for some. So that was a really, really unique idea. I'm not going to take credit for it. It was Lonnie's mind.
Great idea.